Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Introduction to Rec version 3 webinar. My name is Michael Taylor, and I'm part of the Technical Design Authority in the Rec Code Manager. I'll be introducing today's session. We'll be starting with a quick recap of the background of the Rec, and then I'll be handing you over to my Code Manager colleague, Anne Perry, who will be walking you through the scope of Rec version 3, and also the details of the communication and engagement plan. The purpose of today's session is to outline the Rec communication and engagement plan, which includes all the upcoming deep dive sessions and communications that will be available ahead of the Rec version 3 go live on July the 18th. This will allow parties to ensure that the right people at your organisations attend the relevant targeted sessions and are aware of the upcoming material. This is also an opportunity for you all to provide comment and feedback on the communication and engagement plan. Let us know whether there are any areas of the Rec version 3 that you would like to know more information on, or particular areas of concern that you might have, so that we can provide the support you need ahead of V3 launch. We will be answering your questions at the end of the session. Any that we're unable to answer, we will take away and follow up on after the session. Questions that we receive through the Rec version 3 go live engagements will feed into an FAQ that will be made available on the Rec portal. You are also able to contact us through the normal channels, such as a Rec service desk or through your operational account managers. So just before we dive into the Rec version 3, I'm just going to go through a brief summary of how we got here. Thank you, Amelia. So back in 2016, Ofgem launched their significant code reviews, the process which provided the tools for Ofgem to initiate industry-wide code reform. One of the key recommendations from the significant code reviews was the introduction of a dual fuel retail code that would help simplify the code landscape through code consolidation and enable faster switching. We then move into Rec version 1, which launched in February 2019 and included the designations to facilitate the delivery of faster switching. Then, in September 2021, we had the introduction of Rec version 2, which launched the operational Rec as you know it today. Rec version 2 was formed from the consolidation of the MRA, SPA, MACOPA, SMECOP, and elements of the BSC and DACUSA. Finally, we have the last major milestone of the Rec implementation, which introduces faster switching provisions through the launch of the central switching service, associated schedules, and other Rec services, which will be covered in more detail later on in the presentation. So I'm now going to hand you over to my colleague Anne, who will walk you through some of the V3 material in a bit more detail.
Great, thanks, Michael. Hello everyone, my name's Anne Perry. I'm the Rec Change Delivery Manager. I'm part of the Code Manager service, and I'm responsible for the change management process. So hopefully most of you are already involved or aware of the changes that have been introduced as part of CSS Go Live. But we thought it was useful to, I suppose, provide an overview of what the impacts are, and at a high level, what the impacts to the products and the services are. So what this slide is trying to represent is really the volume of the impacts that are going to be seen from Rec version 3. So not only is it introducing new category 1 and 2 products, it is also changing some of our existing products as well. So all of the category 1 and 2 products that are detailed on the screen, kind of it is broken down by the type of document they are. So we have sort of new schedules, amended schedules. We have new service definitions for the new services that are being brought in as part of the CSS arrangements. We have the EES service definition, for example, is being changed. There are going to be significant changes to the data specification and the elements of that. And it is worth pointing out that there will be a specific session, engagement session in June around the data specification changes, because we are aware that they will need to kind of be talked through and make sure that everyone is fully aware. As well as the category 1 and 2 products that are shown on the screen, there are also category 3 products that are being impacted as well. So there are 10 new category 3 products, and there's going to be 7 current category 3 products that are going to be amended. And that does include the EES user guide is being split down, so that is going to be split into users. So like I say, the schedules are being updated and being introduced to really reflect the changes in the switching and governance arrangements. What we're also seeing from a schedule perspective, so the category 1 documents, is the removal of the MRA and SPA transition schedules. The provisions within these schedules are being transferred to either the CFSB schedule, so the consumer facing switching and billing schedule, or in the case of the supplier meter registration services, so the SMRS provisions, they're going over to BSC. So we are seeing some transition from schedules into other schedules, but also the new schedules that are being introduced, and then obviously the changes that have been made to the current ones. I think the key message really is the breadth of the changes to each of these, and obviously the obligations that then changes or brings in on parties is something that we really want to highlight. And as Michael mentioned, today's session is about introducing you to our comms and engagement plan, but really trying to make sure that we highlight the need for people to engage with our events. So we have got quite a number of events, communications that will be coming out. And so people understanding how broad the impacts are and the need to engage is something that we really want to highlight and encourage people to be aware of, to be engaged with, and to sign up for. Millie, if we could just move on to the next slide, please. And then what I just thought I'd cover off is impacts to services. So post CSS, all the services that are on the screen at the moment, these will fall under the REC governance, with the responsibilities for these services sitting either with RECO, DCC, or with DNOs and GTs. So if we kind of cover the key services that are being set up for the post-CSS world, what we've got the Gas and Electricity Inquiry Service, so the GES and EES, which have been adapted. So these are existing services, but they are being adapted to share the CSS data. However, the GES is now moving under RECO responsibility as part of version 3. The DNO and GT responsibility, we've got the Gas Retail Data Service and the Electricity Retail Data Service. So these are the existing interfaces between existing CDSP service under UNC, with ExoServe delivering that service on behalf of the GTs. And then we have the MPAS service that currently sits under REC, and that is provided by each of the DNOs. And then probably the services that most people are kind of interested in, which are the new services that are going to be coming under the DCC responsibility. There's the CSS, so the Central Switching Service, so that is consisting of the address service and the registration service. There is the Switching Operator Service. This is a key one, so this is the wraparound service that DCC are going to provide to manage the service, which will be done via the new service desk and the switching portal, and those will be the real key engagement points for parties to engage with around the service. We've got smart metering DSP kind of within the slides under the DCC responsibility. This is a current SEC service. We've represented it under the REC governance. It's really because of the data that will be received out of CSS, but really that's all the engagement. However, we do recognise the linkage with the CSS arrangements because of that data provision. And so any changes that we would look to make to CSS, we would need to consider that interface with the DSP. And then finally, we have the CSS Certificate Authority, which is the service that makes available the security certificates for any of the users that want to interface with CSS. So that's a whistle-stop tour of the services. Like I say, we do have the more detailed events planned in, which will cover specific elements of the new services, the changes to the services, and obviously how that impacts you as parties and how you engage with those processes. upcoming communications and engagement events. I think there's a recognition there's going to be lots of engagement over a short period of time. We want to make sure that all of the right people from your organisations are really aware of what's coming up, and that they have actually signed up to the bulletins, which will make people aware of when the events are happening. And it will also be one of our key communication channels for sharing updates, for sharing links, and for sharing information. So as I say, all the events are going to be published in the weekly bulletin, so they'll be highlighted. We'll also put it onto social media, onto LinkedIn. We'll advertise those within the REC portal itself. If you aren't already signed up to the weekly bulletin, I think that's a really critical way for you to keep up to date with what's happening, what's coming up, and you can do that by raising a service desk ticket. What we have also done is obviously we've identified the topics for upcoming events and communications. But what we really see today being is your opportunity to let us know what is it you actually want to be covered within those events or the communications. So if there are particular elements of the topics that I kind of come on to explain in a few minutes, or if you think there are topics that are missing from the plan, again, this is an opportunity for you to highlight to us what elements of the new arrangements or the changes to the arrangements or the obligations that you will need to meet. Let us know what it is you want to cover. What you can do is you can submit your questions and any points through Slido now, or we can have those submitted through into the service desk. What we then do is have a look at any of the responses that we get and look to see how we can build those in to make all of the upcoming events and the communications kind of meet your needs, to give you the information that you need to be ready for REC version 3. And so, yes, we have come up with a plan. We've come up with those topics, and for the first few, we have the content of those sessions planned, but we do really want to make them effective, useful for you, and make sure that everybody, all parties, no matter how big or small, the roles that they play, really have an understanding of what it means for them and what they will need to do and how they will engage with the arrangements with the code manager and also with the CSS service itself. So please submit your questions, submit your points that you want to get covered, and we can then take those forward as we assess the sessions that we need to have within the plan. So looking at the plan itself, the comms and engagement plan. So this is available on the REC release page in the REC portal. And if it is that we do look to introduce any changes to the plan, the new versions will be published on the REC portal. What we'd also look to do is to communicate that through the weekly bulletin as well, so that if we do introduce or change any of the events to incorporate people's feedback, we'll let you know what's changed, and hopefully then we can make sure that everyone's kept up to date with a kind of a moving picture. What I'm going to do now is, I suppose, just to give people a bit more context around what each of these events or activities is going to cover. You can see there are a lot of events coming up. It's appropriate. We want to make sure that people have all the information, but we're using different methods, different ways to share this information. So we have some information that's relatively straightforward that we'll share through bulletin comms or potentially through emails. We're going to have some videos that will be produced that will share some information, some webinars, which will be sort of like this, where we will present information, but also it's the chance for people to ask questions. And what we also have is, towards the end of the plan, some drop-in sessions which are open for people to drop into and ask the questions that they need to be prepared. So walking through the events then, so the first element that we've got is around the monthly consolidated reports. So there is a communication that is due to be published tomorrow, and this will outline that outlines the last day that the reports will be produced, and actually how this data can be obtained from the 18th of July at CSS Go Live. And it's also where to go for additional data requirements if needed. So if you haven't necessarily signed up to the weekly bulletin and you are interested in understanding about those reports, then now's the time to kind of sign up and make sure you're on that list so you can see that information. From an FAQ perspective, from today's session, we will be publishing FAQs. So any questions that we get that either we can answer today or we can't, they will all be consolidated and published within a set of FAQs, and that will be published on the REC portal. Then coming on kind of our next session then is a webinar, and this is performance assurance, and this is planned in for the 26th of May. And this is something that our performance assurance team within the Code Manager is managing. Christina, I don't know if you're perhaps able to give a brief overview of what's going to be covered in that event.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Vermouth. I'm part of the performance assurance team in the Code Manager. So the webinar, as Anne said, will take place on the 26th of May, and it will be covering two main areas. So the first one is an overview on CSS readiness and what's changing within the REC performance assurance service. And this includes the changes to the risk register and our monitoring approach, the market entry process post CSS, and the new PABS performance assurance board's responsibilities. And then the second part of the session is around the risk monitoring thresholds and how the thresholds will be set under the REC. So an overview around the threshold methodology and how the REC Code Manager will be using these thresholds. And lastly, how the risk thresholds will impact the REC parties.
Great, thanks, Christina. So moving on then, one of the next events that we have is actually going to be a survey that we want to send out. So this is around STEP and the escalation routes. So with the introduction of the CFSB schedule and the secure data exchange changes to the schedule, they are being kind of introduced and changed to reflect REC version 3. What has been identified is changes that are needed to obviously those escalation processes. What we're looking to do is to publish a survey which will include and explain the changes to STEP, the changes to the escalation route, and the changes to the messages that will be seen off the back of that. That survey is going to be published in the weekly bulletin, in the change bulletin that's going to go out tomorrow. What we're looking to do is to get views on those changes, to understand kind of feedback and to understand people's awareness and readiness for those changes. You will have until the 27th of May to respond, and what we'll be looking to do then is take those survey responses and to be able to then create a drop-in session to answer those questions that have been identified through that survey. So this again is about understanding people's needs through the survey and then addressing those. Week commencing the 10th of June will be that drop-in session where we'll be able to cover off those questions around the STEP and the escalation routes. From a GES and an EES perspective, the webinar, this will cover the gas access arrangements, how to get access to the GES and the EES portals, what the changes are that are being made, what do they look like. There'll be a demonstration of how to use the REL, explanation of the APIs for the portals, where to find information, and how to ask questions around the changes that have been introduced to the GES and the EES. What we've then got is an introduction to switching in the REC. So this is a webinar cover the party obligations regarding switching. And then moving forward, we've got the data spec webinar. So this is going to take place towards the end of June. And this is going to cover off all elements to the data spec changes, just to make sure that people are fully aware of what they are, what they need to be aware of, and therefore any of the message data items or interface changes that introduces. Kind of linked to the data spec, we've got the market scenario comms. So this will introduce kind of new market scenarios relating to switching. What we will do is look to explain these changes through comms that will come out through the weekly bulletins, and they'll also be available on email as well. Moving on, we have the entry assessment testing comms. There are going to be changes to the entry assessment testing. and we'll provide this information out in comms. And then we move into a slightly different type of event, which is videos. They've got the EES and GES videos. These are going to be how-to guides on the changes. So kind of more static content, taking any feedback that we've had, and then giving people that video to explain what those changes are. And that will be available from July in the portal. And then we're moving through into, we're getting closer to the go live point at this stage. So then we have the deployment approach. So this will be available within the portal with a link in the bulletins, and this will be published a week before implementation. So this will cover what the cutover from Rec 2 to 3 will look like, where to find information, and how to get support. And then we move we're actually into implementation. So when Rec version 3 goes live, we'll let everyone know that successful implementation. But what we'll also do is just make sure that we're aware of what else have we got outstanding, any future sessions that we've got. We'll kind of let people know at that point what else is coming post go live. And then finally, just picking up, we've got the drop-in sessions. So these are the going to happen once a week post implementation for 4 weeks. These don't have any agendas. These are real drop-in sessions, so the opportunity will have all the right technical and kind of code manager representation. If we need to have the right service providers involved as well, so that we can answer people's questions that we'll have that they need to do in readiness for go live. Any of the questions that are asked during those drop-in sessions, those sessions will be recorded in FAQs that will be published. So if people aren't able to make the drop-in sessions, any questions that anybody asked during those sessions will be captured as FAQs and available to everybody, whether they were in the session or not. So kind of reflecting, I know there's a lot of information there, and some of it people may not necessarily have taken on board. I think the key message again is there's lots of engagement. We are trying to find different routes and different ways to engage with people, rather than, for example, having all webinars or all communications that are coming out, to try and address have webinars where it's more meaty topics, communications where it's a much cleaner message. We feel it's kind of appropriate to give that differentiation of message, just so that we are conscious everybody in the industry is really busy, and so we will have these type of webinars, have the drop-in sessions where they're required, but we'll also send communications out just to make sure that people are being kept informed about more of those simpler, more straightforward messages. But the key thing is don't just use those these events and these communications to find information. And Millie, if we can just go on to the next slide. So I suppose a recap, the FAQs, so all of the FAQs from all the different sessions, such as this, they're available on the Rec portal and the released information page. FAQs will be updated, maintained, so it's a good place to, if you're not sure if a question's already been asked, check the FAQs, find that information. We've also got the wiki. This will be updated. We've got knowledge articles that have been updated to reflect the topics that are covered within the plan. And as we develop material, the wiki will be updated to, again, reflect that information and to provide supporting information or to signpost where more detail can be obtained. If you still can't find the answers to the questions, then absolutely raise a service desk ticket. We want to either address through the events or the communications or through FAQs information. And if there is anything that's missing, then please raise it, please ask it. And I think a key route for support is your OAM, so the operational account managers. They're there to support and to help you to navigate all the information that's out there. We know there is a lot, and so please engage with your OAMs and as a key engagement route to help you to prepare and engage and just find the information that you need to for readiness.
we've had quite a few questions, but before I hand over, there's some that I can easily answer, so you don't need to worry, Anne. So there's been a question surrounding like signing up for the bulletins. So as Anne said, you can either do that by raising a service desk ticket via the portal or emailing inquiries@recmanager.co.uk. Or if you go on the Rec News page and there's a bulletin section there, and you can just click and an email's automated for you, and then the service desk team will get you signed up to the correct bulletins. There's another question surrounding the slides that will these be shared? So with the recording, yeah, we can have a link so we can include the PowerPoint as well. So I'm just going to go for some of the most popular questions, and as Anne said, we've got a variety. We've got quite a lot of code managers on, so hopefully we should be able to answer the majority of the questions. So one of the first questions is, what is changing that isn't directly related to the CSS faster switching? We know that escalation processes are changing in version 3. Is there anything else?
So I'm going to probably ask maybe Sarah or Andrew to I suppose give an overview. I think you're probably closest to give that holistic view of the impacts, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it might be one that we'd need to take away to get a comprehensive response. I know off the top of my head, there's some additional clarity going in around the solar process. So arguably it's not directly related to CSS, but it's linked to some of the work that's been done under the switching program. So I think that's I think we'll need to think and go through. At the end of the day, all of this has been delivered through the switching program and consulted on through the switching program. So whilst it might be argued that it's not switching related as such or CSS related as such, it's still everything that is changing within V3 is part of the schedules that the switching program have managed. So we can go away and have a think and see if there's anything that needs to be called out that people might not be aware of. But it's all within schedules that have come directly from the switching program and being implemented through the switching SCR.
So I think just to build on that, it sounds to me as though there is a requirement there that's, I guess, been identified through that question for a I guess a high level guide, just to point those areas out to parties to help them spot where there are those differences to the existing schedules, because I guess that's a bit that's slightly more tricky to spot.
Why don't we take that one away and look to work out the most appropriate way to provide that view and that information then? I think that's the best way to take that one forward.
Yep, that's fine. There has been some comments made about kind of the portal and some of the functionality and kind of negatively, so we'll take that away. I think we will pass that across to our portal team just to look into that for you, and I think a few people have liked that as well, so obviously it's not just one person who's having some issues with that, but yeah, we'll pass that across to the portal team. Another question we have is, how does the SDEP relate to the new Rec CP that's been raised? Does it mean there is a scope for additional changes, or is it simply to tailor the training?
So I'm assuming they're talking about the CP that's been raised around R45. So this isn't, the R45 is really to just reflect the changes that have already been set out in the CFSB schedule and that are being made to SDEP within the data specification. So it isn't purely a housekeeping, but it's mainly around making sure that the SDEP messages that are all within the data specification within EMAR, that they accurately reflect the changes to the escalation levels and the changes to the messages that Rec version 3 brings. So this has been progressed so that EMAR is aligned with the schedule and the SDEP system at Rec version 3. So it isn't necessarily bringing anything new in individually, This is just about making sure that there are no inconsistencies across the rec, across the data specification or the schedules. And so it is more, we're seeing this more as it isn't necessarily housekeeping, but a type of housekeeping for this consistency. So I'm hoping that that's kind of where the question was coming from, but that is specifically what that CP that's been raised is trying to do.
Thank you. So there's some questions surrounding the schedules. So are all the version 3 schedules finalised and are they available?
So they are in the process of being finalised now. So the final versions are being put through email, and those final changes being made now, and we are due to publish those early next week. I'm going to say Monday, but it'll be early next week, following the formal baselining that will be completed tomorrow, and they will be published on the rec portal. Oh, Michael, you're going to add to that?
I was just going to say that you can already explore some of this within the email already, but just with the caveat there from Anne that that they'll be published again in a Word version on Monday when they're sort of fully finalised. So yeah, you are able to explore it on the email by swapping the configuration to version 3, and then you can explore it as it will look on launch day.
And just on the topic of that, the differences with the schedules between the clean baseline rec version schedules on the portal and those with track changes, can you advise which versions they should be looking at?
So all the clean one is without the track changes, so it's that end goal. So the track changes, so between as the schedules have been consulted on through the programme, the redlined one is from that previous version. The clean version is that latest view that we have. What I will say is those will be replaced on Monday with that finalised version. I know, Sarah, you have been involved in obviously the provision of the redline schedules. Kind of, I think, would that be your view as well, that the clean version is that the latest one, and then we'll replace that on Monday with the final?
Yeah, I mean, there's tweaks to some of those that were agreed through RG at the end of April, and that's what's going to be replaced next week. So it's very near final, the ones that are currently on the portal. But as you say, next week it's probably worth waiting to get those, and that's the clear final version. And yeah, everything clean is what will go in on the 18th of July, provided the modification gets approved.
Thank you. And there's some questions surrounding EES and GES. Just today, we haven't got any service providers on the call, so we might have to take these away. There's been a comment that some of the sessions seem quite late in the day, especially when there are changes to access. But for the session, there's a question surrounding, will these EES and GES sessions include guidance on using the REL? And they're aware of our obligations regarding the REL, but practicalities are unclear. So I don't know if anybody on the call can actually.
Shall I pick up on that one?
Yeah.
It's Andrew Wallace here. So there's already been a session facilitated by Ofgem, which provided information on how to use the REL. It also provided some useful information on how the inquiry services will make that information available. So that particular seminar, I think, is available on the REC portal for people to access and review. I think in addition, I think what Anne's flagged is we're looking to have a further session to provide any additional guidance to parties on how the new how the changes to the GES and the EES will look, how people can kind of access the REL on those services at the start of, in June, and again that's more of a kind of interactive kind of drop-in session, so people can understand and ask questions about the changes to how you access the new information. And I think on a more enduring basis, kind of we're looking to put in place some kind of video guides on how the new services work. But I guess the focus at the moment is the what's different, allowing people to understand and kind of get their head around the changes. The enduring kind of how-to guides, which are, you know, these services are there, people kind of hopefully understand how they work at the moment. But you know, the focus is on the change, and then the enduring kind of how-to guides will be developed and produced. I think, and you were talking about those being done in July.
Perfect, thank you. So someone said, we have concerns with the detail of the changes being proposed in the R45 solution. What is the best way to feed into this? Will this be via the survey?
So I actually think if you can contact me, so I'm leading that change. I think if there is any concerns around that, so my contact details through the CP, you can access it that way. I think let's use the change proposal as that route through. Absolutely, if you want to through the survey as well. However, if it relates to what the scope of that change proposal is and what it's trying to do, then I'd rather have those discussions sooner rather than later than wait for the survey results to come through. So please feel free to reach out, and if needed, I'm happy to set up a call with one or a number of people to talk through anything that we need to.
Okay, thank you. So someone suggested for upcoming events that it might be worthwhile that we can suggest which roles, so for example, supply, DNO, MEM, each event is aimed at, and yeah, I think we should take that on board. So when we send out the invitations for those, we can include those on there. And someone else has said it would be useful to understand where each section within the SPA MRA will be sitting under the new schedules, e.g. what is in CFSB and what else is where.
So I think that is something, yes, yeah, that'd be great, thank you.
So I think my understanding is that is something. I think you were going to say the same thing. The kind of code manager is developing to provide to users. I absolutely agree that kind of traceability matrix type thing would be useful, and I think the code manager has already kind of picked that up with an expectation to provide that to parties.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, we recognise that is needed by parties, so that is something that we will progress.
Thank you. Someone's asked, where can they find the baseline schedules?
So they are within the REC portal, so in the REC documents, and there is a section within there to the REC version 3 baseline documents. So it's just a kind of navigation from the main portal page through to REC documents, and then through to there's a section specifically, and where we have a redlined version, it'll be there now, and then obviously the latest clean version, and then we will be replacing those, as I say, on Monday.
Okay, and that sort of links into kind of the next comment. Someone said that there are too many locations on the portal where information is stored. So for example, there's useful documents, FAQs and REC documents. And I think that's just more for us to take on board, just to make sure that people know where things are. So obviously information isn't being missed. So yeah, we'll take that on board. Another question, the how-to guides are what we use for staff training. We need them ideally now to be ready on time. Is that possible?
I think.
Shall I pick that one up?
Yeah.
So sorry, if that's in relation to the JES user guides and the EES user guides, so the expectation is that so they're being updated as kind of REC Cat 3 documents, and I think the expectation is they will be published for parties to use at the start of next week. So the user guides themselves kind of updated with the information on, you know, how do you access the kind of the REL. So with that additional information incorporated, should be there for parties to use from the start of next week.
Perfect, thank you. Another comment says it would be useful to have a list of schedules that are not changed once REC version 3 goes live, e.g. PPM arrangements. Is that something that can be made available?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, so we can take it's basically taking the baseline statement. We know which ones are amended, we know which ones are new being brought in, we know which ones are being removed, and obviously what's left, so we can provide a nice clean list of that. So yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And someone has said that it would be good to issue a schedule for the events, please. So yeah, I think that's something, they are included in the weekly bulletins, but we can extend those. I think at the moment they're only showing for the next 4 or 5 weeks. So no, we can definitely include, and actually maybe our section on the portal, we can include kind of that comms and engagement plan so people can see what's coming up. So thank you for that. Another question is, how will the DCC and RECO communicate regarding switching changes that are raised post go live?
So we're working very closely with DCC and the service providers that are now kind of under the REC governance. So we will have planning sessions with them. I think ultimately we've got a integrated process and model with them. So that means that for where there's changes that, apart from operational changes, which will go through a kind of operational process, so that is any patching they need to do, emergency system. So some of the small maintenance type of activity, where it is significant change as a change proposal, then we will work closely with them to design, to plan, to then deliver, right from kind of initial idea that either a party or the REC code manager has raised, or something that DCC themselves want to deliver, any improvements or changes, whether that be, you know, DCC or kind of ExoServe or any of the ERDS providers. We will work with all of them and through that process. So it won't be necessarily a REC wanting to, at a late date, trying to force through a change to DCC. It is very much a planned up front, work with them to design, to assess. Once we understand what the impacts are, it's then what is the appropriate mechanisms and routes through to deliver those changes. But it's all done collaboratively, it's all done as kind of integrated processes. So in theory, and we're starting to see some changes going through now. In practice, this process will make sure that no surprises for any parties or service providers through those changes.
Thank you, Anne. Another question, it would be useful to know how the code managers are expecting to manage escalations not being resolved by contract managers with the timescales in CFSP. So
I don't know if anybody has a view on that one, or whether that's a question that we need to take away. I think that's one that we need to take away. Okay, so yeah, absolutely, we'll get the answer to that one. I think we may not necessarily have the right people on there to answer that one.
Yeah, it's fine, and the person's left their name as well, so we can easily contact them. Okay, will the red line version still be available in EMAR after the baseline documents have been published?
So EMAR retains a complete history of the evolution of the REC. You can revisit any of the previous configurations throughout its full history, going right back to, I believe, version 2. I think, Ros.
Yes, that's right, version 2.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so you can explore that as you like, and there's a compare configuration functionality, so you can sort of draw attention to any particular changes within a schedule from version to version. There is guidance out on that, but we can signpost people to that through this communication stream as well.
Thank you. There's a question surrounding what are the 10 new category 3 documents?
I'm going to say Andrew. I don't know if you can cover this while I try and find the list.
Yeah, so there's a range of kind of Cat 3 documents. I think primarily they are the more kind of detailed operational arrangements. So, you know, I think a good example is around the new kind of kind of service management arrangements. So providing those that kind of lower level detail of how that the switching operator service management arrangements will work. Describe how the operational change arrangements will work as well. So I think there are those new kind of detailed level kind of Cat3 documents that support the new switching arrangements, and I think, as Anne said, there are some changes that are being made to the existing kind of Cat3 documents, things like kind of the user guides and such like. And I think I wonder whether it might be something that would be helpful to parties to describe the new Cat3 documents and the changes to those Cat3 documents as a post kind of seminar kind of exercise.
Yeah, I think we can do that. I think what we'll do is probably aim to, if everyone's comfortable, we'll publish it as part of the FAQs. So we'll pull that together. Merely depending on when you're looking to publish the slides, we could also add something into the slide pack if we have time to do that as well. If not, yeah. FAQs.
Okay, thank you. For fast switching specific guidance on things like using CSS, Service Desk and the RHEL, it's unclear on how these informative sessions will continue under the REC.
So personally, I've not been involved with those sessions so far. I don't know if anybody has a view of how those sessions, whether they do transition or not, or whether that is something that we need to take away. Let's take it away.
Yeah. Where are the user guides just mentioned published on the portal? I think these might be the new ones.
Category 3. So they will be once they are live. They will be part of the category 3 documents as part of the rec documents section. So kind of that navigation through from the main page on the portal through to rec documents, and there is a category 3 product section specifically there. So once they when they are live, they'll be in that section. So that's where the category 3 ones will be stored.
Okay, and there's another comment surrounding that the documents and user guides are all in different areas on the portal, and I think it just kind of echoes what we said earlier, that we need to kind of make sure that they're easy to navigate. So the final question on Slido at the moment, it would be very helpful to have a clear distinction around what is faster switching and CSS related, and what is almost general like BAU continuous rec improvement. I think again that's just a comment that we can kind of make sure that we can make clear. So that's all on Slido. I have seen a few. Oh, Carl, he's got his hand up. If you wanted to ask your question verbally.
Hi, yeah, sorry to be a pain. It was just a quick one around rec portal navigation. Are there any plans to reintroduce the search functionality rather than people having to kind of rely on click the link, click the link, click the link, and hope they end up in the right place?
There is. I don't know, Millie, if you know what the timeframes are for that, but it is something that we are looking to reintroduce. Obviously, we want it to be functioning and working and bringing back the accurate, relevant content. And I think at the moment it isn't necessarily, so that's why it's not working. But we are looking to reintroduce that.
Yeah, just on that, I do know it's being looked at by the portal team, but again, I don't have any timescales, but I can speak to the portal team just so we can actually share those with you guys, so you know when that should be made available again.
Great, thank you.
No worries. Mark, you've got your hand up. Did you want to raise a question? You're on mute. No, you're back.
Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all right. That just reminded me of that last question. Just reminded me of something else. Some time ago, I reported an issue with the on rec that when you go to a document and you want to look at it, it says it will try and produce the document for you to view on the screen in a minute or two. That's never worked. You have to download it, which then means you have to wait for it to download and things like that. I was told that was being investigated, but that is months ago. So is that being worked on, and will it be rectified anytime soon?
So this is when you click on it, it sort of indicates that it will be displayed, but it's downloaded, and it tends to be when it's a PDF.
Yeah, it says it will be displayed. It will take a minute. It never does, so you have to download it. Yeah, typically is PDFs. But you know,
so it is something that's on. It is something that's still on the list. That I think, Mark, it might have been possibly me that you actually raised it to. So we have that on our list still as something to be looked at. It is part of our. We have a number of areas that we're looking to resolve. I think because you can access the documentation, it isn't necessarily one of the higher priority areas at the moment. If, however, you think this is impacting your ability, then please reach out to me separately. I'm happy to have that conversation and understand the impact. I think we obviously have identified a number of opportunities to improve the service, opportunities to make it more accessible. We've had to prioritise those just because of the volume that we've got, that we really want to make the portal effective. So let me know if that is something that is impacting your ability to engage, and we can look at how we can change that priority.
I think it might just be useful for parties that have not encountered the fault to put a note out to say it will not be displayed in a minute or two. Click the download button, because when I first encountered it, I sat there waiting for it to download for 5 minutes, did something else, came back 10 minutes, did something else. So until people know it's a fault, they will waste time for that to happen. So if it can go out in the bulletin to say this is a known issue that's being looked at, I think that would help everybody, not just those of us that have encountered the issue.
Millie, maybe that's something that we can take away, have a look at how we put out an appropriate message.
No, absolutely, yeah, will do. Thank you, Mark. Some other questions that have come in now via, I think there's one on the chat, but it's also now on Slido. Is the expectation for one S-step survey response per organisation, i.e. will we need to collate all feedback internally and then respond at once, or I imagine is it on like an individual basis?
I don't have the details of the kind of the comms that are going out. I don't know, Millie, if you are aware of what we've actually asking people to respond with.
I unfortunately don't, but I can I'll speak to internally and then get back to you, because I've got the name as well, so we can share that as well. So yeah, we'll take that one away. And another question that's come in is the ServiceNow tools are broken. Where do we raise this? It gets halfway through and then the function to click next disappears and you can't proceed. I don't know if anyone knows I don't know what ServiceNow is, so if anyone knows the context of that.
I'm assuming, is it the ServiceNow, which is the kind of the CSS service desk? Is that it could be that. Why don't we take that one away?
Yeah,
we'll check our service desk from a rec code manager perspective, just to make sure there's no concerns there. But I think possibly ServiceNow would be the CSS service desk, so we'll have that conversation with them just to understand what the issue is. If anybody can maybe send some details through, maybe through to either myself or Millie, and then we can take that forward. I don't know, Millie, if you've got a name of somebody to contact.
No, unfortunately, that is just as anonymous on that one. But yeah, happy if you want to drop us an email, we can look at that for you. And that's all the questions I can see at the moment. Is there anything else that anybody wants to raise verbally or via the Teams chat? If not, I imagine that will conclude today's session, unless anything else from your side.
No, that's it from me. I think, we'll take away, we recognise that, there's going to be lots of questions that people have around kind of the new arrangements, how to kind of access, how to use. The ones that we haven't been able to answer, we'll get the answers. We'll look to address what we can within the FAQs. If not, then in future FAQs and through the wiki, we'll share that information. I think this is the start of lots of provision of information, but I think if people do have questions that we're not answering, like I say, please raise them through service desk, email the inquiries mailbox, and we can make sure we're addressing those as we go forward as well.